Hello there, guys. For today's video, what we're going to be looking at is CSS, JavaScript linting, and also unit testing. So we're going to be going through the motions of how to create unit test using Jasmine and Karma for our AngularJS components. And I'm also going to be going through the current configuration that we have in the project for SAS linting and JavaScript linting. That way you guys can know where to modify all the included configuration files, all the files that will actually be linked, and where all of these things are located. So without further ado, let's get started. All right. So to start off this one, first thing that I want to show you here is where the files are located, where the configuration files are set up, and what do they contain. So this assumes that you already have the repo in place. So let's go there. First, you need to go to OLS, trunk, and then OLS applications, and the support folder. Over here in the support folder, that's where you will find all this information. Let's start with something very basic, and we're going to open this grunt file. So let's do that. Oops. Okay, so what does this have? It basically has very simple tasks, but it includes an ESLint task that will take care of all the linting process. And as you can see here, we have two different options and, well, two different tasks here. One is unit test code. This one will take care of all the unit tests in case you want to make sure that the unit tests have correct linting. It usually is commented out because you really probably do not need that one as much. So if you need to test it, you can simply uh, remove the comment and add it to the development code. It has to be a switch because otherwise a grunt will probably not work. So that's pretty much it. Then the other one that we have is development code. And as you can see here, what we're looking for is we're specifically looking for all the files inside this support Angular folder. Anything else is ignored by now, and probably will stay that way because most of the code that we already had before, and that is mainly jQuery and vanilla JavaScript code, has a lot of different, you know, it has a lot of different styles between the files. So doing an effort to get them all in the same page would be massive. So for now, we're only focusing on the supporting your folder. If at some point we do have the time, then it would be ideal, and we should only do something like so. But for now, we have to bite the bullet and do it like this. Um, the other test that we have here is we have a shell test. Basically, this run file really it could could seem unnecessary because most of these things could be done with npm scripts, but we already had the ground file somewhere, so uh, basically, I mean, it doesn't matter. This can be changed later on if there is a need for it. But the shell ground test runs basically two of them. One of them is for the unit tests, Karma, and the other one is for the linting on the SAS files. So basically, that's the one that will run all the linting on the SAS files, and we'll read the configuration file. And again, we'll go in a second into the configuration here to make sure and to understand what exactly are we reading here. Um, After that, then we have a pre-commit task that basically just runs all of this in combo. First, it runs the unit test here with Karma, then runs the CSS lint with SAS lint, and the JavaScript lint with ESLint. So I want to show you what we have in the SAS lint file. The SAS lint file has a bunch of different options here. I mean, these are the actual rules that we are expecting the code to have. This is in accordance to these code guidelines that we have here that we are using for all the unified file uh, development. So basically, all of these need to be followed and shouldn't be changed. This is the convention that we're using: hyphenated lowercase, how many spaces, if there are color keywords or not, etc. I mean, all this configuration, it really, uh, any detail on this one, you could go to the SASLint file, find out what exactly it means, but really just go to this URL. There it is highlighted. Go to this URL, and I'm gonna paste it on the description below to so that you can see what exactly we're looking for. Now, the other part is how are we, and the part that you actually need to modify at some point is whenever you're adding a new property or a new component, you might be adding a new SAS file. So in order for the linter to actually take it into account, you need to add it here. There's a comment here that says that in an ideal world, the above would be used, but since styles are vastly different between main existing files, we'll have to add them individually for now. And what this means is something very similar to what I said on the ESLinting files. Basically, if we were to do this, then the SAS linter would take every single SAS file that's inside the support folder, and that would be great. But since we have so many different styles from things that were already built before we even started working here, this is going to throw a lot of errors. So we cannot afford that for now, and we have to comment it out. That's the reason why we're doing this, and we could also use some kind of wildcard, like say, okay, all support whatever files. Unfortunately, there are also some support files that have that name or well, this prefix, so we cannot use that either. Um, at the end of the day, the way to add a new file here is just to you can the line above and change the name here to your component, and that's it. That's how the splinter will know that it needs to read it, add it, and we'll check all the rules in there. So that's for the actual YAML file for SASLint, and I'm also gonna open real quick the ESLint JSON file. This is tailored for EMC for OLS. In case there's something that needs to be modified, then it would need to be also modified on every single source file. So I really, you know, my advice is not to modify this at all. But unless there's something very specific that needs to be done. Other than that, basically, many of them are common sense stuff. There are some strict equality rules and a couple of other things that will just help us remove errors, logic errors that might surface because of that. So, all of these will are basically in accordance to some rules that we define when in the starter project, and yeah, at the end of the day, this will be helpful for everyone. And one important part on the linters on both the SAS linter and this JavaScript linter is that the idea is to have the code be the same or look the same, no matter who wrote it. So it's important to have this one, and obviously, it's also very important to actually go ahead and run it. So that's it for the linters. Let's see what we have on Karma's configuration file. What is it going to do? So I'm going to open this one up. Um, the configuration for Karma is actually very similar to what AEM would do. AEM is basically just opening up all of these files and dumping them in some place so that they are available for you to use. So what we're doing here is we're doing exactly the same thing. We're going and grabbing all this information. We're grabbing Angular libraries. We're grabbing jQuery and modernized lazy load. All of these that are being used at some point by the project and by AEM. So we are adding them all in here, and then we are we're adding all the files that starts with an underscore, which are actually a lot of them. We're adding all the utils, all the libraries, all the widgets. We're pretty much adding everything here, mimicking the AEM structure. Then we're also adding this folder. So as you can see here, this is a node modules um, folder. So this means this is only going to be working locally, and this also means that you do need to run uh, npm install, and this is a package JSON file. It includes a couple of different things, but most of them actually have to do with Karma and unit testing. I mean, we could get away without using a lot of other things, but really Karma and Jasmine are super important here. So running npm install on your folder is very important. So you know, uh, basically you just need to run npm install, and it will grab all the dependencies and place them on the files and the folders that you actually need. So yeah, I mean, again, run npm install. It will install all these dependencies, and you will be ready to go. Um, so going back here, once we have run actually all the npm, the npm install task, we'll have this available. So we're adding that because otherwise there's no way we can do mock data or actually use controllers and directives inside of our unit tests, and they will break. So we're adding Angular mocks here, and then we're adding a bunch of static data that we are also using inside of AEM, and this is mimicking the same thing. We're adding, first of all, we're adding the application, then we're adding components, services, controller services, directives, filters of the JavaScript files. We're also taking into account the HTML files in case there is any directive that's grabbing an external template, and and afterwards, then we're looking for our tests. So we have a test command file that will, has a couple of useful functions, and then the actual tests. Uh, Basically, that's the entirety of the, the configuration file for Karma. One thing that we can change is that instead of only using Phantom.js, which we're using as a headless browser for unit testing, you can go ahead and change it to do this, and use both Phantom.js and Chrome. That way, instead of only testing it in one browser, we will test it in both, which might be useful for some very specific event handling and other kind of options. But I mean, mostly this will mostly be enough, and I don't think you're going to need to modify absolutely anything here, because any test you add on this folder, it will be grabbed directly. So no need for it to, or for anyone to worry about adding it here, like we have to do it on the YAML files. So that's so yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Hold on. All right, so I'm gonna get this window out here, and I'm gonna go back here to uh, well, this is my root, the root folder of the project, where all these run files and all these configuration files are located. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to run the grunt test that I was looking at, grunt pre-commit. This one will actually go ahead and run all the unit tests, and we'll also run uh, the SAS linting and the CSS linting, so and the JavaScript linting. So there we have it. It passes all these unit tests, and no problems found on the SAS lint. And there was a warning here that we're actually gonna be taking a look at, because what we're gonna be doing next is we're gonna actually be writing a unit test for a controller. So first off, this is the file that it's complaining about. It's saying that, okay, you have here a magic number. So let's try and fix that first. So we're gonna say timeout. We're gonna call it like I don't know, timeout. But that's something very simple. That's just a way for us to know how long it's gonna take. So that should fix that issue. If you've been seeing the other videos, then you will realize that this controller is something that we built as a very basic test, and does a couple of very simple things. In essence, what it does is it expects someone to instantiate this init function, sending an object with two properties. One is called delete, and the other is the loop description, and that's it. It concatenates both strings and builds this message. That's it. It's something extremely basic, and that's it. For now, we're not even gonna open AEM. We're gonna do all of this uh, on our file system, we don't need to have AEM running, because what we're going to do here is we're going to write a unit test to handle this, and see how we can, you know, do something about this. So for that, what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I'm going to uh, go back here, and I'm going to, well, you know what? I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go to where the unit tests are located, which is to two folders up, and then tests. So here we have a couple of tests that are written already, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add something that's going to be called support basic control test. Um, Something very, very simple like that. So let's write a unit test. So first of all, we need to we're using Jasmine here, so we need to describe. I don't know. This is going to be called the basic model. Um, you can use other files that are already there to kind of get yourself like uh, a head start, and make it easier on you. But I'm gonna try and do something very, very simple here. So then I'm gonna declare both root scope and controller, because I'm gonna be using both of those. And before each these things, I'm gonna be using or TMC project, because that's the application, or the Angular application, that has everything. And I'm also going to be using an injection here of uh, its root scope with an underscore, and controller with an underscore, or with surrounding underscores. And then I'm going to be saying that root scope is root scope, and that controller is controller. So that way I'm using the actual values from Angular Max. Then I'm going to be describe the basic controller that I'm going to be testing. Add a function here, and I'm going to define here controller, and I'm going to define the scope, because I'm going to be using that one as well. So before each one of these, I mean, and you can do this in a different way. I just like to do this, you know, or in this organized way for myself. I mean, first the model, then the controller. So I mean, but you can get rid of one of these. You don't need both of them. But yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna be injecting something else before each one of these assertions. So I'm gonna be doing this, and then I'm gonna say that scope is root scope new. So I'm going to be creating a new root scope, and I'm going to be starting it here on the scope. So then I'm going to be doing controller equals controller, and the name of my controllers, which is called what? Basic CTRL. Basic CTRL. And setting the scope equals the scope. So that way, we should have everything here ready for us to actually build some assertions. So let's go ahead and do that. So it should build the message correctly. And that's it. That's all we are looking for forward here on this test. And let's say that we, uh, first of all, before we actually test anything, let's go ahead and do something like, okay, scope init, and we're going to be sending uh, the actual object that we're expecting. In this case, is here we are expecting a property called delete, and a property called delete description. So let's do that. And so this is going to be a test, and delete description. It's going to be called something else. So um, let's go ahead and try and see if that's working correctly. So if, before we actually do any actual testing, let's just do a console log and see if this is working correctly. So let's go ahead and run the pre-commit task again. let's see what the result is. Okay, so well, it says that it's success. By the way, if you happen to find this error, handlebars error, that doesn't matter. That just means that it wasn't loaded before some other file, but at the end of the day, really, there is no effect. So there we go. We're seeing here on the log that the actual message is being passed correctly. So now we can do our assertion here and expect um, scope.message to be test. So if I run this one again, then there we go. We're seeing here somewhere basic module, basic controller that it should build the message correctly, and it is doing it. So I mean that's a very basic way of doing doing a unit test for a controller. Now let's try something a little bit more different. Like let's go ahead and create a directive of sorts. So um, instead of creating a new file, I'm just gonna do. Yeah, I think it would be a good idea just to do it here because otherwise it'll take a long time. So yeah, let's go ahead and say it. Well, this is already inside functions. Ah, I guess this works. So function um, is strict, and we're also going to be doing something very simple. Let me see if I have something already done to avoid myself typing a lot. Directives, right? So okay, we're gonna be calling this one test. I already have one that's called test. So what we're looking for is return, and we're looking for scope, and we're going to be looking for uh, argument one, and that's going to be literal, and argument two, which is also going to be a literal. Then we're going to restrict this one as an element, and we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be calling a template URL for this file instead of using the template directly. So this would probably fail in a very quick manner, and I'm gonna in this one here. I'm gonna add it here, Angular module, and it's gonna be called support TMC, and it's directive test two and test two. So that's it. The only problem here is the actual URL. So hold on a second while I build that. So I need I need. All right. So I'm copying this from another. Basically, what I'm trying to look for, and I mean this is what I was looking for, an actual controller that already has something in here. So I'm gonna call this one test2. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating a new controller, I'm sorry, I'm creating a new directive that's gonna be looking for this specific template. And I also want to do a unit test for that. So first of all, what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna go ahead and do a new file. Go back here and I'm gonna go to that actual page and I'm gonna call it test2.html. And basically it's gonna be a div, and I mean something super simple. I'm gonna be showing up here the argument one, then I'm gonna be showing whatever here. I'm gonna give it a class. Um, I call it computed value, and I'm gonna be using argument two here. So basically, the only thing that I'm doing is again very simple things. Uh, I'm building a directive. I'm providing argument one and argument two as parameters, and I'm going to be placing them inside of a div. That's all that I'm doing. And then I'm using this template URL to actually show it. So, so this is going to fail in any unit test that uses it. This will fail. So let's go back here to the support uh, basic control test. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do another description for another item. So basically, what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to describe. This is going to be called a test two, and it's going to have a function. And for this one, I need to use compile from Angular so that I can actually use it. And then I'm going to need root scope. Uh, and then before each one of them, I'm going to do module and support EMC because I need that one. And I mean, pretty much the same that I was doing on the other test. This, by the way, should be on its own file. I'm just doing this here to in the interest of time. But yeah, it should be separate. Then we have compile here and root scope because I'm gonna need those two guys. And then I'm saying, okay, compile is compile and scope is root scope. So that's terrible. And then what I'm gonna say here is it um, should uh, grab the parameters and load them correctly uh, and pass them to the template. Um, yeah, and that's what you do. Um, so what I'm doing here is, okay, I'm going to write the element and I'm going to compile it. And the way that I should do that is in a very simple manner. Um, I'm going to say test 2 with argument 1 equals hello, and argument 2 equals there. So that should yield hello there. I'm wrapping this one up like so. And I want this build on the root scope, so I'm passing it up as a parameter as well. Then I'm doing, and I'm going to do root scope digest so that it is actually executed in the digest cycle. And then I'm going to expect the element HTML to contain basically that's what I want. I want it to have hello somewhere, and yeah, let's see if that works. All right, so again, this one shouldn't work, so let's go ahead and run it. We already wrote the unit test, and we're expecting it to fail. So let's see. Okay, so it did fail. Let's see what happened. Test directive expected. All right, this is not right. Oh, whoa, look at it. That's wrong. And this is wrong. And this is wrong. I'm not starting this one. So, okay. I guess that's also a reason why this was failing. But that was not the reason that we wanted it to fail. So, okay. Oh, look at that. That's two. Okay. So it now should fail correctly. And basically, the failure that it will show is something akin to the lines of something not being able to be loaded correctly. Uh, and also maybe because I didn't correctly do this. Jesus. Okay. So now, so now we will actually go ahead and do that actual failing that we're expecting it to do of basically a 404 or a get issue. So here we go. It's finding an unexpected request because it's not expected for by Angular mux that we are adding a subsequent directive and a request here. So basically, what I'm gonna do here right now is Uh, hold on a second. Okay. So anyway, let's go back here. And what we're going to be doing here is let's fix this one. So at the end of the day, what's happening is that Angular is expecting, or actually, it's not expecting that to happen. But how can we fix it? And the surefire way to do that is also the reason why we have that common files. So on these common files, what we're doing is it loads a directives template with HTML. This will do all the this will do all the heavy lifting, and we're only going to be we're going to be calling it here. But suffice to say that what this will do is it will look for the URL of a directive that's provided on the template. And actually, the other way around, it's going to be looking for the URL of a template that's provided on the directive. Remember that over here, for it to be able to work, we need to be able for it to be able to work inside of AEM, we need to call it directly from this specific folder. Otherwise, it will not work. And inside of Karma and Jasmine, that's not the same URL. So that's also the reason why it fails. And for us to be able to fix that, we need to use this directive template. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to do something like, and I'm just going to copy this from somewhere else to got a little bit of time. But basically, we're looking for this template URL, and test2 is the name of the directive template, the HTML. And the actual server template URL that we're looking for is this one. This is the one that we have defined on the directive. And this template URL is the one that's we're going to be accessing directly from Karma. From Karma's web server, every file is based on this URL. So base, content, source, main, content, JCR root is something that we have to add before so that Karma knows what we're doing. So that's the first step. And then what we need to do here is we're going to need to go here and go to template cache. We're going to be adding this service so that we know and that we allow Angular to load it directly. And now we're going to be calling that load directive template function that I talked about it. And we're going to be saying, okay, I need the template cache service, I need this template URL, and I need this server template URL. So now I think I should be able to make this work. I think, let's see, let's go ahead and run it, and it should actually work. So let's see. With that, it's running, and it's failing. It's still failing, but why is it failing? Well, it's not failing because of that. So, oh, handlebars again. So, yeah, remember that any error that has to do with handlebars doesn't really matter. That's just a loading issue. So, it seems to me that it's working correctly. It sometimes will not fail. So, just run it a couple of times, and eventually you will see it working correctly. So there we go. There's a success, no problem at all. And again, this one. So that's just small caveat there for that one. Now, there's also some times where you actually need to interact with the scope that's provided inside of Directive. So let's try and do that. But for that, I think I'm going to do a little bit more of a change here. And I'm just going to do a small change here, similar to the way that I worked with the other unit test. I'm going to call this one module. I'm going to leave compile scope. All of these, I'm going to leave them there. I'm also going to leave this one here, but I'm also going to do another a describe inside of this one, and I'm going to be calling it test2 directive. So from there, I'm going to call a function, and I'm going to add an element just to instead of doing compile in every single assertion, I can have it as something that I can reuse. And I'm also going to be using this scope variable, and we'll see in a second why. Why is that important? So before each assertion, I'm going to inject a function, and basically I'm gonna be placing element equals compile. So basically this stuff really. So I'm gonna copy this, paste it here. I'm gonna remove this guy. Don't need it. And I'm also going to be adding this root scope digest as well, because I'm also expecting that to happen all the time. And the only other difference that I'm going to be adding here is that scope is going to be element isolate scope. So with that, what I'm doing is I'm passing the isolated scope to the scope variable so that I can now access it and work with any assertions that I have. So after I can do this exact same thing. I'm going to move it here, so it should. And I'm gonna do a copy of this one just so that you know, or so that you can actually see this in action. I'm also gonna grab should set the scope correctly. I don't know. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say expect. Actually, I'm going to do a console log. Right. So what I'm going to put here is scope dot argument one, and I can also test for that here. So I'm going to be expecting argument one, and I can change this to equal hello. It should be hello. So let's go ahead and do that. Also, by the way, I fixed the handlebars include, just so you guys know. That's a legacy issue that was just showing up here on my code. But for you guys, it should be fixed. So here it is. I mean, I'm accessing directly the scope. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. And having this on having the scope here available allows you to do more complex functions like if your directive does certain things calling I don't know that it has a couple of functions that do maybe order items or filtering of some items. You can test it using this. um, so yeah, I mean I guess that's the most basic things that we can do. And just remember that this is not completely paramount for absolutely every component. Not every directive needs this. Uh, not every controller needs this. So there you have it. That's basically all you need to do to write a unit tests, and also the tricks that I showed you to be able to create a controller, to create a directive, and to mock all that data that will be shown so that the test can actually be shown. Remember that not every single component or every single controller needs to have a unit test. It would be ideal, but it doesn't really have to be that way. As for self-linting and JavaScript linting, just uh, follow those instructions that I gave you, and you should be good. If there's anything you need to modify, however, uh, it will, yeah, it probably wouldn't be the best thing to do because then you would need to modify all the source files. So just leave it as it is and add all the new all the new files that you need to link to the YAML configuration on the CSS on the SASLint configuration file, and you should be good. So again, hope this video was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you at the next time.